Welcome, dear learners. My name is Chainika Senapati, and I welcome you all to the week 7. Dear learners, in the previous week, we discussed about the cooperatives and different aspects of rural development, and in this module, we shall discuss about the rural infrastructure and the basic services, primarily focusing on the rural housing, drinking water, and sanitation. So, dear learners, in this video session, we will examine the three fundamental pillars of rural development in India, that is housing, drinking water supply, and sanitation. So these are the basic services, and these basic services are essential for improving the quality of life, health outcomes, and overall development of the rural communities. In this video session, you will be able to explore the government schemes, the implementation challenges, technological interventions, and the best practices for ensuring equitable access to these critical services. So when we talk about rural housing, drinking water, and sanitation, it constitutes the fundamental thread of the basic services that determine the quality of life, health, the dignity of rural population. In India, where approximately 65% of the population resides in rural areas, ensuring universal access to these fundamental services represent both a developmental imperative and a constitutional obligation. These services are intrinsically interconnected, and that is, they are adequate housing provides shelter and space for water and sanitation facilities, safe drinking water, which is essential for maintaining hygiene and using sanitation facilities, and proper sanitation prevents water source contamination and creates healthy living environment. So all of these are interrelated. So, as I have said, we will explore the conceptual framework for these three essential services in the rural context and examine their multifaceted importance for individual well-being and community development, and that provides a comprehensive coverage of the major government schemes designed to ensure equitable access. So, dear learners, after going through this video session, you will be able to explain the conceptual foundations of rural housing, drinking water, and sanitation. You'll be able to describe the essential components of adequate rural housing. Then you'll be able to analyze the health, economic, social, and some gender implications of access to safe drinking water in the rural areas. You'll be able to examine the multidimensional nature of sanitation, including the toilet access, waste management, hygiene practices, and environmental protections. You'll be able to critically evaluate the major government initiatives such as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Gramin, Jal Jeevan Mission, Swachh Bharat Mission, Gramin. You will be able to assess the role of community participation. Again, you will be able to understand the linkages among housing, water, then sanitation. Then you will be able to reflect on the sustainability challenges also. So when we talk about rural housing, it encompasses far more than mere the physical shelter. It represents a complex bundle of attributes, including the dwelling structure, access to the basic amenities, security of tenure, then cultural appropriateness, then environmental sustainability, and disaster resilience. The concept of adequate housing, as articulated in the International Human Rights Framework and India's constitutional directives, includes several essential elements. First is the physical structure, a durable structure with walls, roof, floor made of permanent materials that we call pakka house, that provides protection from the weather, ensures privacy, and offer adequate space for household members. So when we talk about in the Indian context, the distinction between the kacha, that we call the temporary or the semi-permanent house, and the pakka, that is permanent housing, remains significant, though the emphasis increasingly has some benefits. Then comes the basic amenities. Access to essential services within or immediately adjacent to the dwelling, including safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, then electricity connection, drainage for wastewater, then ventilation and lighting, and separate cooking space to prevent indoor air pollution from the traditional cook stoves. Then security of tenure, So the legal protection against the forced eviction and the clear ownership or the occupancy rights comes under this heading. So for many rural poor people, particularly landless laborers and the marginalized communities, lack of the land tenure creates vulnerability and prevents access to the housing assistance programs. Then one of the essential element is the affordability. So housing costs, whether for construction, rent or maintenance, that do not compromise household ability to meet other basic needs, and this includes essential construction costs and ongoing expenses for repairs and utilities. The next element is the habitability and safety. So the structures that protect inhabitants from weather extreme, then provide thermal comfort, then ensure structural stability and incorporate safety features including disaster resistant design appropriate to local hazards like earthquakes or floods or cyclones. The next element is the cultural adequacy. So it comes under that this the design and the material that respect to cultural identity, traditional practices and local preferences, while incorporating modern amenities, that is under this cultural adequacy. And rural housing should not impose alien forms but evolve from the local architectural traditions. So, the evolution of rural housing in India has been marked by the transition from the predominantly kacha structure made of mud, thatch, bamboo, and other locally available materials towards the pakka houses using the burnt bricks, cement, concrete, and manufactured material. So, while this transition has improved durability and weather resistance, it has also raised certain concerns that environmental sustainability, affordability, and loss of climate appropriate traditional design. So, dear learners, let us now discuss some of the significance of the adequate rural housing that extends across the multiple dimensions of human development and social well being. So, when we talk about the health and well being, housing quality directly affects the physical and mental health. Inadequate housing with poor ventilation traps smoke from the cooking fires, causing respiratory diseases that disproportionately affect the women and the children who spend more time indoors. The World Health Organization estimates that household air pollution from solid fuels combustion causes hundreds of thousands of premature deaths annually in India. Damp, poorly constructed houses facilitate growth of molds and harbor diseases, vectors like mosquitoes and rodents. Overcrowding again increases the transmission of communicable diseases, including tuberculosis and many like this. And conversely, well-designed houses with proper ventilation, adequate lighting, separate, cooking spaces, and sanitation facilities create healthier living environments. And when we talk about mental health and psychological well-being, it improves the significantly with secure, adequate housing, and living in one's own pakka house provides dignity, reduces stress associated with housing insecurity, and it enhances the self-esteem. And many studies actually documented improved mental health outcomes when families transitions from the kacha to pakka housing. Then again, there is economic security and asset creation. For rural households, housing represents the most significant asset, often constituting 60 to 80% of the total household wealth. A pakka house provides economic security, can be leveraged as a collateral for credit, and represents intergenerational transfer of wealth. And home ownership correlates with increased investment in children's education and higher entrepreneurial activity also. Adequate housing enables home based economic activities from traditional craft to modern service businesses, and particularly important for rural women's and entrepreneurship. And the housing construction also processes itself generates significant employment, particularly from unskilled to semi-skilled workers, masons, and local material suppliers. It also important for the social dignity and status. In rural social context, when we say about it, housing quality significantly influences the social status and dignity. Owning a pakka house enhances social prestige in the locality, facilitates social ceremonies and festivals, then improves marriage prospects for family members, And for marginalized communities, particularly the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes and others, improved the housing represents visible evidence of upward mobility and social enhancement, challenging the traditional hierarchies that has. And housing assistance programs that enable poor households to construct pakka house contribute to social equity and inclusion also. So, when we talk about housing, the adequate housing with in house toilets and water connections particularly benefits the women and the girls by reducing time spent fetching water or finding secluded spots for open defecation, then hereby freeing time for education, then income earning activities or rest. And privacy and safety within the home enhances dignity and reduces vulnerability to harassment or violence. Many housing schemes now register houses in women's names or in joint ownership, strengthening the women's property rights and bargaining power with households. And also the separate well ventilated cooking spaces also reduces the women's exposure to harmful smoke. So we can say that women are empowered if they are given with educate in housing system to them. Again, when we talk about disasters resilience, India's vulnerability to natural disasters like earthquakes in the Himalayan region or the northeastern regions, cyclones along the coastal regions, floods in the river basins, making disaster resilient housing critically very important. And traditional Kacha structures offer little protection against such hazards and resulting in loss of lives and injuries and economic devastations from the destroyed homes. And when we talk about disaster resistant Pakka housing, incorporating appropriate engineering features like earthquake resistant bands, then elevated planes, then cyclone resistant roofing. So, significantly, this reduces the casualty and damage. And post disaster recovery is faster when housing stock is more resilient, reducing long term economic and social disruption. Again, when there is a shift from the kacha to pakka housing, has its environmental implications also. That is, increased use of cement, high carbon footprints, burnt clay bricks, then manufactured materials. This modern approach increasingly emphasizes sustainable alternatives. So, use of the compressed earth blocks, fly ash bricks, bamboo, recycled materials, and other economy friendly options can reduce environmental impact. So, integration of the renewable energy like the solar panels, the rainwater harvesting, and climate appropriate passive design features enhances the environmental sustainability while reducing operating cost. Dear learners, there are certain government schemes for rural housing. First, let us discuss about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. So, this was launched in the year 2016 and we call it PMA YG, which represents the government of India's flagship program for achieving universal rural housing. It replaced the Indira Awas Yojana with significant design improvements and addressing limitations of the earlier program. So its objective mainly is that the primary objective is to provide pakka houses with basic amenities to all the households and those living in kacha houses by the year 2024, which was then extended. And the scheme actually aims to enhance rural livelihood security through creation of durable assets, then contribute to achieving sustainable development goals and improve the rural quality of life comprehensively. Some of the key features and design elements are that for the beneficiary identification, this scheme uses the socio-economic and caste census 2011 data for objective, transparent beneficiary selection, then reducing discretion and elite capture. And Gram Sabhas validate the list through participatory processes, and priority categories include these houseless households, those with Kacha houses, the STSC households, then BPL families, women headed households, and disabled persons and minorities. Then, when we talk about the financial assistance, Rs 1.20 lakhs in plain areas and 1.30 lakhs in the hilly areas and difficult areas also. And some certain northeastern states, they are given with the financial assistance with these amounts, and the cost is share, that is 60-40 between the center and the states for general category states, and 90-10 for northeastern and the three Himalayan states. When we talk about the specification of the houses under this scheme, the minimum 25 square feet meter plinth area with a hygiene cooking space should be provided. Then the houses must include a toilet constructed under the convergence with Swachh Bharat mission, and technical specification ensures structural safety, disaster resilience, and basic quality standards. Then, when we talk about the convergence approach, systematic convergence with multiple schemes enhances outcome. Then, MGN REAGA provides the 95 days of wage employment for unskilled work during the construction. Then, Swachh Bharat Mission provides toilet construction. Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushalya Yojana offers skill training to the masons. Then Sobhagya scheme ensures electricity connections, and Ujjwala provides LPG connections, and BADP provides additional support in tribal areas. Then when we talk about technology and transparency, the Awas soft application tracks the implementation through geotech photographs at the foundation, lintels, and then completion stages. And this creates transparency, enables real-time monitoring, and reduces corruption. Aadhaar-based payments are there, ensures the beneficiary receives funds directly, public display of the beneficiary list, and social audits and accountability layers. Then the houses must incorporate disaster-resistant features appropriate to the local risk, like earthquake resistance in seismic zones, then flood-resistant elevated plains, cyclone-resistant roofing. So use of these eco-friendly materials like fly ash bricks, compressed earth blocks is encouraged, and training programs for the masons ensure construction quality. When we talk about the achievements of the PMAYG, then we have to talk about that since launch of this scheme, there is sanctioned over 29 million houses and completed more than the 25 million units, as of the data 2024, transforming the rural housing landscape across India. States like Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Orissa have been major beneficiaries in absolute numbers. Then we have to talk about the credit linked subsidy scheme. While PMAYG focuses on the poorer segments, CLSS, Credit Link Subsidy Scheme, addresses housing needs of the economy weaker section, that is EWS, and low income groups who may not be, quality of free housing but need financial support. So the scheme provides interest subsidy on the home loans, making housing finance more affordable, and this enables rural households with some income capacity to access formal credit for housing construction or improvement, expanding the reach of the housing assistance beyond the subsidy-based approaches. So, dear learners, let us now move on to rural drinking water. So, when we talk about the conceptual framework, safe drinking water is defined as water that does not pose health risks over a lifetime of consumption, meeting quality standards for chemicals and microbiological parameters. In the rural development context, the concept actually extends beyond safety to encompass adequacy, accessibility, reliability, and equity. The United Nations recognizes access to safe drinking water as a fundamental human right, while India's constitution makes provision for safe drinking water a directive principle of the state policy. So, when we talk about rural drinking water supply, it involves several critical dimensions. First is the quality. So, the water must meet the Bureau of Indian Standards specifications for drinking water with acceptable limits of chemical contaminants like fluoride, arsenic, iron, nitrate, and the absence of harmful microbiological organisms. And the quality encompasses appearance like clear, colorless, odorless water, and taste acceptability. Then the quantities, minimum 55 liters per capita per day for drinking, cooking, bathing, and other domestic purposes as mandated under Jal Jeevan Mission. Then accessibility, water should be available within the household premises or at a safe, convenient distance. Household tap connections represent, highest accessibility level, eliminating time and labor burden of fetching water from the distant sources. And the community sources should be within the 500 meters and accessible to all the household without discrimination. Then reliability. Water supply must be regular and dependable throughout the year, including the summer months when many sources fail, and the functional infrastructure with adequate source capacity, proper operation and maintenance ensures reliability. While drinking water is often provided free or highly subsidized for the basic needs, sustainable system requires some cost recovery for operation and maintenance also. So the tariff structure should ensure affordability for the poor while incentivizing, conservation. Then the source sustainability is one of the element that the water extraction must not exceed recharge rates or ensuring long term availability. This requires attention to groundwater levels, surface water conservation, and rainwater harvesting and watershed management. So it is very important that we should have all have safe drinking water. Mainly focus is on rural areas. So the safe drinking water is a fundamental to public health. Waterborne diseases like diarrhea, cholera, then typhoid, hepatitis, dysentery, these etc. are some of the cause that enormous disease burden, particularly affecting the children under 5 years. So the diarrheal disease alone causes hundreds of thousands of child deaths annually and millions of cases of illness. So the chronic exposure to chemical contaminants like fluoride causes dental and skeletal fluorosis affecting millions of children and million of the population that we have. And the arsenic contamination is linked with the skin diseases, cardiovascular problems and cancer sometimes. And the iron in water causes anemia like the symptoms they have. Then providing safe water dramatically reduces this disease burden. So it is very important to have safe drinking water, and that improves the child survival, nutrition of the people and development of the society as a whole. So it is linked with the educational outcome also. So the safe drinking water or drinking water has a link between the educational outcome. How is that when the children, especially the girls, that must fetch water from the distant sources, they sometimes miss school or have less time for studies. So waterborne illness cause absenteeism. School without water supply face hygiene challenges and lower enrollment, particularly for the girls after puberty who need water for menstrual hygiene. Then piped water supply to household and schools improve attendance, performance and retention with particularly strong effects to the girls. So it is really very important for safe drinking water that everybody should have. Then economic productivity also is one of the factor, that time spent fetching water often it takes 2 to 4 hours daily for women in the water scarce areas. It represents enormous productivity loss. This time should be spent on income earning activities like agriculture or education or rest. The illness from the unsafe water causes work loss, medical expenses, and the reliable water supply within the household frees this time, enables home based enterprises, and improves overall productivity. And the studies also say that they estimate significant economic return from the water supply investment through reduced health cost and increased productivity. Water collection is actually predominantly a woman's responsibility in rural India. And the physical burden of carrying heavy pots, often 15 to 20 liters or more sometimes over a long distance, causes some skeletal problems, pregnancy complications and fatigues. So the women face safety risk traveling to distant sources, particularly early morning or evening. So this drudgery reinforces gender inequalities. So household tap connections transform women's life by eliminating this burden, enabling their participation in education, employment, and community activities also. And it represents a tangible recognition of women dignity and rights. Then we have to talk about the social equity. Access to water often reflects and reinforces social hierarchies. Upper caste households typically have better access to sources like wells or hand pumps, while the Dalit households may be denied access or forced to use distant inferior sources. So the universal piped water supply to all the households eliminate this discrimination, advancing social justice. Ensuring marginalized communities that have equal access to safe water represents fundamental equity and constitutional obligations. Again, it has an environmental linkage. The water supplies is intrinsically, linked to environmental sustainability. Over extraction of groundwater, depletes the aquifer, affecting the long term availability and ecosystem health. Conversely, water conservation measures like rainwater harvesting, groundwater recharge, and the efficient distribution reduce environmental stress also. So, integrated water resource management approach recognizes these linkages and promotes sustainable use while meeting human needs. Now, let us discuss some of the schemes for rural drinking water. First is the Jal Jeevan Mission. This was announced in the year 2019, and Jal Jeevan Mission represents the transformational approach to rural water supply. It marked a paradigm shift from the infrastructural creation to service delivery. So this mission envisions every rural household have functional household tap connection, that FHTC, providing adequate quantity and quality of water regularly on long-term basis by the year 2025. And the objective of this scheme is that it aims to provide tap water connection to all the rural households, ensuring water security, improving health and wellness, reducing druggery, especially for women, enabling economic activities and contributing to ease of living. And the ultimate vision is Har Ghar Jal. So water in every home, transforming rural water supply from intermittent shared community sources to individual household connections with reliable and safe water. So some of the features of these schemes are the functional. Number one is the functional household tap connection that I have already discussed. The core deliverable is that providing minimum 55 LPCD of potable water meeting the BI standards available regularly throughout the year. Then source sustainability, it is mandatory allocation of at least 10% of the total scheme funds for source strengthening through rainwater harvesting, groundwater recharge, watershed management, bore well recharge, then renovation of traditional water bodies and spring development. Then community participation, village action plans prepared through participatory processes involve entire community from basis for implementation. Then the water quality monitoring and surveillance. So the multi-tier water quality testing includes the field test kits, FTKs at the village level, operated by the trained local women, laboratories at block district level of detailed testing, then NABL accredited labs for comprehensive analysis. And the results uploaded to the centralized portal enable them a real-time quality surveillance. Then grey water management. Every tap connection must be accompanied by proper grey water management, that is soak pits, drainage systems, or treatment facilities for wastewater from bathing, washing, and kitchen. Then technology and transparency. Jal Jeevan Mission IMIS dashboard provides a real-time data on the implementation nationwide, creating unprecedented transparency. Then funding mechanism is there when the center state cost sharing of 50-50 for general states and union territories, and then 90-10 for the Himalayan and the northeastern states. And the funds released based on the output, tap connections provided rather than just expenditure, incentivizing the performance. Total outlay is substantial of rupees 3.60 lakhs crore over the implementation period. So let us now discuss some of the implementation strategy. So JJM adopts differentiated approach. They have the 100% coverage priority for the quality affected habitats, drought prone areas, then SC/ST majority villages and aspirational districts. States develop state water action plans, district prepare district action plans, and village creates village action plans, ensuring planning is contextualized. Then, when we talk about the progress, from the baseline of approximately 32 million households with tap connections in the year 2019, the coverage increased to over 160 million households by the early 2024. So, the states like Goa, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh has achieved this coverage, and large states with significant populations continue this implementation, facing some challenges of scales but maintaining a momentum. So prior to Jal Jeevan Mission, National Rural Drinking Water Program, NRDWP, earlier it was known as Accelerated Rural water supply program constituted the main framework for rural water supply. While this program created, substantial infrastructure, millions of hand pumps, public taps, and some pipe systems were there. It focused primarily on providing community sources rather than household connections. And the transition from the NRDWP to JJM reflects a evolution in understanding that true water security requires individual household connections and not just the community source. So many existing NRDWP assets are being integrated into JJM with the retrofitting and upgrading to provide piped connections. Now, dear learners, let us discuss about the rural sanitation. So, the rural sanitation encompasses the safe management of human excreta, then wastewater and solid waste to create healthy, clean living environments. It includes availability and use of toilets, proper disposal or treatment of fecal waste, then drainage and management of grey water, solid waste collection and processing, and overall environmental hygiene. Adequate sanitation goes beyond mere, infrastructure to encompass the behavior, practice, and systems that prevent disease transmissions and environmental contaminations. When we talk about the conceptual framework of rural sanitations, we have to talk about some of the components. First is the toilet access and the use. Every household having access to functional private toilet and all the household members using it consistently. So toilets must be hygienic, safe, gender sensitive, accessible to all the including elderly and differently able persons and culturally acceptable. Then next is the safe containment. Fecal waste must be safely contained in pits, septic tanks, or sewer systems that prevent contamination of environment, groundwater, and surface water. Proper containment requires appropriate technology selection based on local conditions. When pits or the tanks fill, the contents must be safely emptied, eliminating the manual scavenging, transported and treated before disposal of or reuse. This last mile of sanitation value chain often receives insufficient attention, but it is very, very critical for sustainability. Then liquid waste management, so the grey water from bathing, then washing, kitchens must be managed through soak pits, drainage system and treatment to prevent vector breeding, then environmental pollution and aesthetic degradation. Then solid waste management again was one of the important component, that household solid waste, biodegradable organic matters, plastic, paper, metals. This requires segregation, collection and appropriate processing through composting, then recycling or safe disposal. Then hygiene practices is again one of the important component. So knowledge and the practice of hand washing with soap at critical times, menstrual hygiene management, food hygiene, then general cleanliness. This complete the sanitation framework. So, dear learners, why sanitation is important? So, the poor sanitation is among the leading causes of the disease and death in rural India. We all know that, particularly affecting the children. So, the diarrheal diseases causes hundreds of thousands of child deaths annually, with inadequate sanitation a primary risk factor. Beyond the acute episodes or diseases, repeated diarrhea impairs nutrients absorption, causing malnutrition and stunting. Environmental enteropathy, that is the chronic intestinal inflammation for that affects the growth and cognitive development. So the intestinal worm infections transmitted through this contamination affect hundreds of millions and causing anemia, then malnutrition, then impaired physical and mental development also. Improved sanitation is really very important. It dramatically reduces these health burdens that just now we have discussed, and the study shows that universally the sanitation coverage reduces diarrhea prevalence by 20 to 40%, improves the child nutrition and enhances their survival. Again, the link between the sanitation and the nutrition is well established. The children in households with improved sanitation show significantly lower, stunting rates even after controlling for income and food availability. Eliminating open defecations, reduces this exposure to these things and allows better nutrient absorptions. And this affects not just physical growth but cognitive development also, with implications for educational achievement and future productivity. When we talk about gender dignity, safety, and empowerment, for women and girls, lack of toilet creates acute dignity and safety issues. Cultural norms requires women to, defecate before dawn or after dusk, then forcing very early waking and waiting many hours, causing health problems. So walking to a, secluded spot in darkness exposes women to harassments, assaults, and violence sometimes. And these are some of the highly, publicized cases of rape or murder highlights extreme risk are there. So the psychological trauma and the daily indignity of open defecation particularly affects women. So a proper hygiene, a proper sanitation facility should be provided. For the adolescent girls, lack of school toilets and inability to manage menstrual hygienically causes dropouts, especially after puberty. And it's providing the toilets, particularly in-house facilities, transforms women's life, enhancing safety, dignity, health, and enabling education and economic participation. And it represents a concrete recognition of women's right and gender equality. So again, we have to talk about economic benefits. So economic analyses demonstrate high returns of sanitation investment. Benefits include reduced health expenditure on, treating sanitation related diseases, productivity gains from reduced lines like fewer work days lost, time savings, long term benefits from improved child development and education. Again, we have to talk about the environmental protection. Open defecation causes massive environmental contamination. The fecal matters pollute soil, groundwater, then surface water sources, creating this cycle where the water contamination causes diseases in the agriculture fields, grazing lands, and living environments become contaminated. So, the proper sanitation breaks this cycle, protecting water sources, then agriculture productivity, and environmental quality. Again, we have to talk about the social equity and human rights. The access to sanitation is fundamental human rights and marker of human dignity. Ensuring universal sanitation addresses the social inequalities like marginalized communities often have poorest accesses. And the manual scavenging, though legally prohibited, continues in some areas, representing extreme social oppression where certain castes are forced into degrading, health hazardous occupations of manually removing human waste. So, the mechanized sanitation system and elimination of manual scavengings represents a social justice and constitutional commitment to human dignity. Now, dear learners, let us discuss some of the major government schemes for rural sanitation. First is the Swachh Bharat Mission, Gramin. So, this was launched in the year 2014. After the Swachh Bharat Mission, Gramin represents India's most ambitious sanitation program aiming to achieve open defecation free India by October 2, 2019, which was Gandhiji's 150th birth anniversary. And the mission achieved remarkable success also, fundamentally transforming India's sanitation landscape. It was divided into phases. First phase was 2014 to 2019. Its objective was to eliminate open defecation through ODF, through universal toilet access and behavior change, improve cleanliness, and accelerate sanitation coverage. Some of the key features were the demand generation through IEC, the massive information education and communication campaign using mass media like television, radio, print, interpersonal communication through trained Swachhagrahis, then school children as change agent, celebrity endorsement, and folk media transformed sanitation from taboo topic to national priority. Then community-led toilet sanitation, CLTS. This methodology triggers communities to analyze their sanitation situation through participatory processes like the community mapping of defecation areas, then calculations showing these contaminated pathways, demonstrations of disease transmissions. So this creates collective disgust and commitment to achieve the ODF status. And The CLTS emphasizes actually more on community actions rather than merely distributing the subsidies. Then financial incentive, some amounts like 12,000 per toilet has been shared between the central and the state government in varying ratios are given. Then priority households like STSC, as I have said, BPL, landless disabled receive additional support if needed. And the incentive release upon construction completion verified through photographs. Then the integration with the MGNREGA for wage employment, then PMAYG for in-house toilets, so the National Health Mission for health promotion and the school programs for children's participation create synergies. Again, when we talk about the technological options, flexibility in technology selections like twin pit pour flush toilets, which is most common, but septic tanks, biodigesters, and other appropriate options allowed based on local conditions. And the technical specifications actually ensure safe containment while allowing the adoption. So when we talk about the achievement of this scheme, over 110 million household toilets constructed during this phase, that is 2014 to 19. The household toilets coverage increased from 38.7% to nearly 100% in the year 2019. All the states and the union territories declared ODF by the year 2019 October 2. This represents unprecedented sanitation coverage expansion in very short period. Then is the phase 2, which was from 2020 to 2025, that is the sustaining ODF and achieving ODF plus. Recognizing that achieving ODF was first step, SBMG phase 2 focuses on sustaining ODF status and progressing towards the comprehensive waste management. So what is the objective of this phase was that monitoring and verification to ensure continued toilet usages, addressing slippages, then repairing non-functional toilets, and continuous behavior reinforcement. Then the next is the solid waste management, so the village level infrastructure for waste segregation, collection system, composting units, material recovery facilities, and appropriate disposal of non-recyclables. Target is managing solid waste in all the villages. Again, liquids management, grey water from household managed through soak pits, constructed wetlands, community treatment systems, or reuse in agriculture or horticulture. So this prevents waterlogging, vector breeding, and environmental pollution. Again, objective of this phase is that the plastic waste management, reduction of single-use plastic, collection of existing plastic waste, and establishment of recycling mechanism or safe disposal systems. Then we have to talk about the implementation mechanism. So the village action plans for solid and the liquid waste management prepared participatory. Panchayats leads implementation with technical support, community awareness, continuous through IEC, and the behavior change campaigns, emphasizes waste segregation, plastic reduction, and maintaining cleanliness. So the performance incentives provide to the well-performing villages. So dear learners, rural housing, drinking water, sanitation, these all three form the backbone of the rural well-being. They are not isolated services but deeply interconnected foundations of human dignity and development. A safe and durable house provides more than a shelter. It offers security, social status, health protection, and a platform for economic activity. When combined with the access to clean water and hygienic sanitation, it creates a healthy living environment that supports physical and mental well-being. Access to safe drinking water reduces disease burden, improves child survival, enhances women dignity, and increases economic productivity. Similarly, sanitation plays a very decisive role in preventing disease, protecting the environment, and ensuring gender safety and equality. Together, these services directly influence the nutrition, education, and long-term human capital formation. Major national programs such as PMAYG, Jal Jeevan Mission, Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin have transformed the rural development landscape by moving beyond infrastructure creation toward the service delivery, community participation, and sustainability. Millions of households have benefited from improved housing, household tap connections, and toilet facilities. Yet, the focus now must shift towards the maintaining functionality, then ensuring quality, then strengthening local institutions, and embedding behavioral changes among the rural people. What this really means is very simple. Is not only about roads and income. It begins at home with a secure roof, safe water to drink, and a clean environment to live in. Ensuring this essential for every rural household is both a moral responsibility and a strategic investment in the nation's future. So dear learners, with this we have come to the end of this video session. See you in the next video. Until then, keep learning.